We as RPG fans have been lied to. For years, the industry has been pushing us towards a narrative of bigger is better. That 100-hour game provides more value. That huge open worlds, completely desolate of objectives, and a map filled with thousands of markers provides more value and accessibility. But let's be honest, when is the last time you finished one of those games and you didn't feel like you had a part-time job? That you felt like your time was actually respected. The truth is that we're drowning in RPG bloat these days. The mechanics are often over-polished and spread very thin and very often not meaningful at all. You'll spend hours fishing, grinding on things that don't really matter just to progress through a 100-hour slog of a game. The pacing of these games is usually glacial and your time is being disrespected. But there is a cure. There is a cure for this RPG bloat. Today we're going to look at two distilled masterpieces of RPGs that are Ys Origin and Dragon's Crown. Today I'm going to show you why a game that takes 10 to 12 hours to beat can provide way more value than a 100-hour slog, a 100-hour Assassin's Creed, a 100-hour bloated RPG. So before I discuss what the cure for the bloat is in the two games outlined here today, we need to define bloat. Bloat in an RPG is the difference between meaningful gameplay and time spent in a game, as in time played. So for instance, traveling 5 minutes between subquests just to fight for 10 seconds, when you know all you wanted to do in the first place was go and fight that initial fight, and you spend 5 minutes running just to fight for a few seconds or a minute, and then you rinse and repeat and you have to do it all over again. And in my opinion, the density of an RPG and what is inside the meaningful parts of that RPG itself are more important than the actual scale that we've been sold over time. You see, most RPGs think they need a world map the size of a small country to make an impactful difference, where Ys Origin takes place in just one location, and that location is Darm Tower. No side subquests, no giant map, no hubs. You have one tower where you move from the foundation of the tower into the heavens. And developer Falcom, shrinking the where, was able to obsess over the how and deliver a very impactful, fun, dense RPG. Ys Origin's biggest weapon against the RPG bloat that we see so often is the fact that the campaign is essentially 3 different character stories. While they all take place in the same Darm Tower, all 3 characters provide a different playstyle that makes the game feel different. So instead of one 70-hour game that is repetitive with multiple gameplay loops of doing sub-quests and side quests, you get to play the same game, essentially, the same story, but as 3 different characters with 3 different gameplay styles. The first character I played as, personally, was Unica Tova. Now, Unica is a straight-up brawler-style character who has no magical abilities, but she has multiple different melee abilities that all function differently and actually provide different options for traversing the world in some cases and having different strengths and weaknesses against different monsters that you fight. Unica's gameplay is all about the crunch. You're dodging at the last minute, you're hitting with heavy physical strikes, and it's that classic, easy to learn, hard to master, fun melee gameplay that you get in a lot of RPGs, but really excels in the 2D, 3D style of the Ys Origin game. And it was very fun playing through as her. Unica is the granddaughter of one of the 6 priestesses of Ys. And unlike most of the people in the floating city, she is one of the few that has no magical abilities. Her lack of magical abilities provide her story a sort of coming-of-age tale feel where she has to grow into her physical strength instead of her magical prowess as most of the people of Ys, and really prove herself to become a knight and fight to free the priestess of Ys from the demons. Unica must persevere with just brute strength alone, with physical skill and determination. If the fast-paced melee action combat of Unica Tova isn't for you, in Ys Origin, you have the ability to start the game as Hugo Fact. Hugo is a mage that turns the gameplay style up on its head and turns the game into a 2D, 3D shoot 'em up. Instead of fast-paced dodges and melee blows, you're trying to maintain your distance as Hugo. You're trying to make sure you keep your shields charged, and you're trying to kite enemies around. It's the same map that you're going to play through as on Unica, but the gameplay itself is completely different. It's like playing a completely different game. Hugo himself plays more as a character, is a headstrong, more confident mage than what you play as with Tova. So you do get a slightly different story, and it shows how Hugo has a different personality. He's more headstrong, resilient, and confident in his abilities. And the transition between those two characters, even though it's the same story, actually makes it feel like you're playing a different story. Just because it's a different character, you feel like you're coming to two different conclusions in the same story. And how each character's personality really interacts with the story and the characters around them changes. So the third character in the game represents the true ending of the game and basically shows your mastery, improves your mastery of E's origin and the tower. And I'm not going to spoil that here in this video. Take it upon yourself to go play it. In a typical 100-hour RPG, you spend 60% of your time walking around in a huge, mostly desolate map. Whereas in E's, you spend 90% of your time engaging with the mechanics and fighting enemies. E's origin doesn't ask you to waste time in menus, leveling up. It asks you to level up your understanding and mastery of the game. And instead of spending 100 hours scrolling through options, running from side quest to side quest, you are in the action the whole time. You rarely go back to speak to any sort of NPCs to get side quests. There are side quests, but they run completely parallel with what you're already doing in the tower. And there are extra things that you can find throughout the game. So there is none of the bloat with all of the pleasure of playing an RPG. If E's origin is about the vertical climb, the second game we're going to talk about, Dragon's Crown, is about the perfect gameplay loop. Developed by Vanillaware and Atlas, Dragon's Crown looks like a beautiful oil painting come to life that plays like a 1990s beat 'em up, but plays to perfection as a more modern game. In most modern RPGs, immersion means walking between quest markers through an often desolate land, and albeit beautiful, can be very boring. In Dragon's Crown, immersion is found in the fray of combat. And just as a bonus, if you're a man of culture, such as myself, you are going to find some assets in this game that you're going to enjoy. Dragon's Crown is a hybrid game. It takes the deep loot systems of Diablo and mixes the RPG character building of a Dungeons and Dragons game. But what Dragon's Crown does is it strips the dead air out of those things. You're not trekking across a 50-mile wasteland where there's an interesting thing here and there with a ton of filler in between. You're going on 15-minute dungeon crawls, and multiple in a row if you want to, where every bit of the action is jam-packed in, and it plays so tightly. In a lot of bloated RPGs, the grind feels like such a slog. It feels like a chore. In Dragon's Crown, the grind is actually a test of skill. There are multiple button inputs that you can do with different combinations, with different characters that are in your party grouped together, and it makes for much more interesting gameplay. There is no just clicking a button to mindlessly watch a bar go up or anything like that. Every second is tense and combat is fun. Now, to keep things fresh, Dragon's Crown, instead of adding a bunch of empty landmass to fill time, they introduced branching paths into the game, where each path can end in a completely different boss. And there's also magical doors that you can unlock with runes, different doors that you can knock down or unlock depending on who you have in your party, what skills you have available. And it makes for a such more interesting time inside of the game. In Dragon's Crown, it's not about giving you a wider world. It's about giving you a denser, more action-packed world where you may spend less time in each run, but that time is well spent and none of the time is wasted. Now let's talk about the characters in Dragon's Crown. You see, each one of the 6 characters has their own completely distinct playstyle and moveset. And that changes with the different weapons that you can get for each different class. So for instance, I played as the Sorceress, partially because of the previous mentioned assets, but the Sorceress is just a fun class for me. So playing as the Sorceress, if I used a staff that was ice-based, I would have a different set of skills that were ice skills, and even one that was a tornado skill where my up and attack button input would create a tornado, where if I had a fire staff, it would create a little flame pillar. And though the Sorceress's moveset wasn't the most diverse, different other types of staffs had different, like, jump attacks and stuff like that. Like I might be able to, with a lightning staff, create a giant AoE of lightning bolts that came down. Whereas the fire one, I would throw a heavy hitting fireball dash down at the ground at an angle. So there is a diversity still of even the Sorceress, more than just the element that you're using. And obviously things like ice froze characters, fire would burn them so that they would take damage over time, and lightning would have its own sort of elemental effect on enemies. But Dragon's Crown is a cure for the bloat because it respects your time for every minute you spend in there. You're not going to spend 10 to 20 minutes doing stuff that was a complete waste of time, like running from NPC to NPC. Even the NPCs that you do talk to in the town, you can just fast travel from them, cut to the chase, and get on so that you can go on to the next battle and go into the next map. Vanillaware and Atlas understand that value isn't about the amount of time played, but the amount of enjoyment that you actually got while playing the game. And as for the overall time of Dragon's Crown, you could spend, I'd say about 15 hours was my initial playthrough, 15 to 20 hours. But that was with one character. I barely touched 2 other characters and played them just a few levels to try them out. Dragon's Crown completely respects your time and makes sure that every time you pick up the controller, you're spending your time playing the game and not commuting around an possibly empty world. Dragon's Crown is an absolutely magnificent game. You can play it with friends. You can play couch co-op with up to 4 people. And there's still people playing online to this day, and I was playing the PS3 version of the game. And on the PS3, I was getting 2 or 3 people joining me at a time, which I thought was absolutely amazing for a game on a console that was that old. Now, they did remake the game, as I understand, for the PS4. Unfortunately, I didn't find that copy. I thought it was only for the PS3, but I'm imagining you could find a lot more people playing online for the PS4 version of it. At the end of the day, length is a terrible metric for quality in an RPG. Even though that's what we've been led to believe, 100 hours of filler in a modern RPG will never compare to the fun that you can have in a well-designed, tight 10 to 20 hour RPG such as Ys Origin or Dragon's Crown. Ys Origin and Dragon's Crown aren't cult classics because of what they chose to put in the game. They're cult classics because of what they had the courage to cut out, and that was the bloat. They proved that an RPG doesn't need to be your second life to be good, and that fun and tight mechanics and fun mechanics are all that is needed. But I want to hear from you. Are we reaching a breaking point with these bloated RPGs like Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed? Or do you think a lot of people enjoy being able to get lost in a game for 100 hours, even if the quality of the game doesn't seem to quite be there and a lot of the content ends up being filler? Either way, if you've enjoyed this dive into these 2 games, please go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe down below. I'm going to be releasing more gaming content every week. If you have any suggestions for other cult classic games or hidden gems, especially of RPGs or survival horror, put them down in the comments below because I want to play them and I'd love to discuss them in future videos. So for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.